Hello, everyone. My name is Julianne Meyer, and I am the host of Own Your Wellness. And this show almost didn't happen today. We've had some major technical difficulties, but it worked out. And I am so glad because today's guest is very special to me. The way that she's helped people, it really touches my heart. And I'm just going to let her explain. So let's bring her on. Her name is Susan Williams. Let's bring her on. Welcome to the show, Susan. So glad to have you here.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited.
Me too. So, I just love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your own wellness journey.
Wow, where do I begin? My whole situation with eating disorders started with a simple diet when I was about 18 years old. It was a harmless diet, just a simple harmless diet of I'm going to, lose a couple of pounds. And I was living at home, and flash dance was the whole thing back then. I don't know, I became obsessed with flash dance. I say, what can I say? But anyhow, that simple little diet, it started to escalate basically, and it was never going to be enough. And I wasn't losing enough weight, and it morphed. It's amazing how that happens, but it just morphed into basically an eating disorder, which probably started as anorexia, but that changed into bulimia. And this often happens because someone will start in, it usually starts with a diet. Actually, the whole thing usually starts with a diet. People just don't realize this. This is why diets can be really harmful, especially with young people. And so it started as, the diet, and then I became my behaviors were anorexic. And then from there, then that wasn't enough. Then it was, how much more can I restrict? Or, what's the next stage? What can I do now to lose even more weight? And basically then it turned into bulimia, which I battled off and on for about 30 plus years, I would say, off and on. So I've been in recovery a good 10 plus years now. But basically, that's my history. That's the history with the eating disorders. Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that you're willing to share and talk about it because, it's kind of a taboo subject. And it's one of those things where it's not like you can get away from it ever. It's not like alcohol or drugs where you can abstain. Because food is, you have to have it to survive. So there's no walking away from the thing that is causing this mental issue.
Absolutely. You just nailed it on the head. And that's the problem, because you know what? It's the most shameful of. I used to run Eating Disorder Anonymous meetings. Actually, one of them, my meetings, was out of a very well-known treatment center that shall remain nameless in San Diego. Very beautiful treatment center. But, they would talk about anything else they were doing, because it's usually a co-occurring issue. So a lot of these, these clients that were in there, I want to call them clients, had, they had other addictions. Okay. So they had other issues going on, the mental health issues. And this was just the bottom of the list that was getting treated each time. They'd keep going back into treatment, and the eating disorder, which actually was the primary issue, was the last thing to ever get addressed. So they check out a treatment, all the other issues had been dealt with, they had a certain amount of recovery, completed the program, but they never really touched on the eating disorder issue, which was actually the primary issue before the drug addiction. Okay, so that's the problem. And there's so much shame around eating disorders that it's always pushed. I mean, even now, it's amazing. I'm so passionate about this topic, if you can't tell. It's so pushed to the background all the time. It's just not discussed. Nobody wants to discuss it because it seems like this dirty little issue that nobody wants to talk about because it's food, right? It's food. Again, it's food.
Exactly. It's fascinating. Sorry, it's fascinating to me because I worked in addiction recovery for many years, and being part of the treatment team, we'd go to treatment team once a week and basically go over all the clients and what their issues are and, that kind of thing, and discuss what what they needed. And it was mind-boggling how many men actually had an eating disorder or disordered eating, which is, I guess, a newer term for, I don't know how you would even classify that as different, but yeah, it was really interesting. It was people that you just never guess. So my point in mentioning that is that they never talked about it. Oh, we lost your picture.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Technical glitch.
Yep. No, we knew this was good. We're just glad you're here.
Folks, just bear with us today.
But anyway, it's just the fact that you never know who is struggling. You have no idea. You can't tell by looking at somebody necessarily, and you can't even tell by their weight necessarily whether or not they struggle with an eating issue. So I don't know. What would you say besides shame is something that keeps people from seeking treatment or help, or just asking for help?
Wow, that's a really, really good question. We actually had quite a lot of guys that would come into the Eating Disorder Anonymous meetings. I mean, some of them were Marines. Mm-hmm. And even now, even though, there's not really much publicity, right? There was a movie that recently came out, but how much attention did it really get? I think it was a Keanu Reeves movie. I want to say it was Keanu Reeves. I think, was it To the Bone? I can't remember the name, actually. I didn't watch it. I probably should have watched it, but I didn't watch it. But it just doesn't, people don't want to talk about it, Mm-hmm. And even in these meetings, they're super uncomfortable even going to Eating Disorder Anonymous meetings. The largest meeting I've ever been into, there's actually one in Leucadia in San Diego. And there's another meeting out of Ocean Recovery in Newport Beach. There's a big meeting on a Monday night. So I recommend a lot of people go to that meeting, because when you go to a meeting, there's only one or two people. It just puts them off going to another one again. That's what they, So it's even worse for guys, like you said, because, people consider this, the general public consider this a chick issue. This is a female issue. This is not something guys get. And they're wrong. And the numbers are climbing exponentially every single day because of social media, because of TikTok, because of Instagram. Girls as young as 5 and 6 are watching their mother get on the scales and, what new diet they're doing. And you've got kids as young as 5 and 6 actually starting to do, get into eating disorder behaviors now, which is absolutely insane to me. But trying to get them to come out, like you just said, I don't even have an answer for that. I think more celebrities need to talk about this, mm-hmm. And highlight it and shine the light on it as much as possible. Because aside from that, I hate to say it, but I really can't see it changing. NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorder Association, is the biggest organization nationally that do NEDA walks. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the eating disorder walks they do.
Yeah.
So, they do them right across the country, in most big cities. There's probably an LA one coming up. They do absolutely fantastic work. They have a hotline, and they work tirelessly. Mm-hmm. But again, it's not getting the attention that it needs. Not even remotely getting the attention that it needs.
It really isn't. And that's why I'm really glad you're here today. Because, if we can shine a little light onto a topic like this and make it okay for even just one person to seek assistance or, realize they're not alone at the very least, then, we're doing our job. So I'm really glad that you're here.
Yes. And what I was say, Julie, was here's the trick here. Okay, so I'm certified in intuitive eating and mindfulness, among a few other things. The only way I can see anyone's going to heal, I healed from my eating disorder by learning how to do intuitive eating. how to be, and people don't understand intuitive eating. They still don't understand intuitive eating. They think it's a diet. If they think that, intuitive eating is I'm choosing my foods carefully, or, I'm eating the right thing, or, whatever the latest fad is, or they have no clue that intuitive eating is all about finding this place within yourself, which is where you feel just right when you're eating. Okay. I like to call it your sweet spot. The Japanese call it hara harachi bu, which is you eat till you are like 80%. Okay. So you're not overly full, but you're not hungry. So you feel just right. And when I was doing my public speaking through the universities in Southern California, I always talked about, there's a story, the three bears. The porridge had to be too hot or it was too cold, and it had to be just right. You're looking for this just right place. And when you find it and you can keep going back to it over and over and over again, it's the only way in my mind that you're going to heal from an eating disorder, especially bulimia. Because the minute you overeat, you're triggered. Right? So, and, when you undereat, then you're hungry, then you've got this other issue going on, because then when you undereat, then you're going to tend to binge, right? Then it goes into a big binge situation. But either way, you've got to have this, you've got to be satisfied, and it has to be just right each time. Because they go into treatment and they get fed, they just feed them up, which they have to do, obviously, to stabilize the weight. But they leave. And they used to tell me this at the EDA meetings, that they were just going to go home and resume doing what they were doing before with their eating disorder behaviors. So, or they were going to use the drug of choice to avoid dealing with the eating disorder behavior. So either way, they were going to end up back in treatment, ultimately.
Exactly. Now, something you said before that I really want to touch on that most people don't really realize is that it usually starts when somebody just does a diet.
Yes.
So how does one stay, I mean, you may or may not know the answer, but do you think, can somebody stay healthy and maybe lose weight if that's what they need to do, but yet not veer off into eating disorders?
Well, it's just going to involve an awful lot of mindfulness. And the problem is that, we know how this works, right? So you lose some weight, and what do people say immediately? Oh, you look great.
Yeah.
What did you do? My God, you look amazing. How much weight did you, and it goes on and on and on. And of course, that feeds that part of ourselves, which is the reason why we're doing the diet ultimately in the first place. It's all to do with, lack of self-love, self-like, self-worth, everything. Emotional trauma, abandonment, abuse, whatever it is. This is what eating disorders usually stem from. Most addictions, right, stem from. So feeding that hole that we have internally. So, of course, when that happens and you get that praise, ultimately, you're not going to stop the diet. Most people are not going to stop the diet, and they kind of might want to push it to the next level. You're walking a fine line is what I want to say. You are walking a fine line with a diet. You just have to be very mindful, because I've had girlfriends who have been on a diet and, it was only 5 pounds and now she's trying to lose another 10 pounds. And it just escalates from there. And I said, look, you want to be really, really careful, okay, with what you're doing right now, because you're on the edge. You're on the edge. They don't realize how easy it tips into an eating disorder.
It really does. And it makes me think too about, the co-occurring disorders and, the alcohol and drugs and things like that. And it's kind of like, I remember working in the treatment center, and we were never as staff allowed to say that somebody looked good, for example, because we don't know if they threw up that morning or not. Yes. And they would equate that compliment with throwing up. So, or starve themselves, for example. Yes. That's a little bit hard to do in treatment, but you understand what I'm saying. It's just interesting how how geared we are to these compliments and how it's like, okay, 5 pounds, well, then 10 would be amazing.
Exactly.
No, 15.
Exactly. And eating disorders are all about control, right? So it's
Mhm.
all about control, probably more than any other. I know they're still on the fence as far as calling an eating disorder an addiction. This has been an ongoing thing. It's they don't want to put it in with bunch it in with everything else. But it really is, because there's a lot of there's euphoria that they get from certain
Mhm.
behaviors. Bulimia, the throwing up creates a bit of a high.
Mm.
Anorexia, the, it's like doing an extreme fast, okay, where you're lightheaded, but they get kind of euphoric. There's a high associated with that too. But I mean, it's a control. It's control. If you've got no control over any other area of your life, and this is the one thing that you can control, when everything else around you is chaotic, then that's what it becomes. That's what it's all about. And nothing is going to stop you from doing it in that moment.
Exactly. And something else that has in common with more traditional addictions is the mental obsession.
Yes.
You're constantly thinking about it.
Yeah.
When am I going to, fill in the blank? So that is.
Yeah. And you have to eat, right? You have to eat.
It's not. And, for somebody like me, now here's a question for you. So when I was young, I basically stopped eating. And this is after my mom died. And it was one of those things where, it was a control thing. And I just felt bad and I wanted to feel worse because I don't know. But I don't have those issues anymore, thank goodness. But I will say this, there's certain things I cannot do. Like, for example, counting calories. I can't do that. And as a personal trainer and a nutrition coach, I can't do that. And for me, it's because that's my trigger. That's when I go into getting back into those really unhealthy behaviors that I picked up when I was younger. So I don't know. I mean, there's got to be, I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are about, like, in traditional addictions, they say we do recover and, that kind of thing. So do you feel like it's the same thing when it comes with eating disorders?
I would highly recommend this book, Julie. So, Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole. So once you've immersed yourself in intuitive eating and you do find that sweet spot I told you about, I mean, yeah, absolutely, of course. I've had many relapses where I've started obsessing. It happens. I mean, we're human, and it is going to happen. I'm never not going to think about it ever again. However, I don't act out on those behaviors that I used to act out on before, and that's the difference. But our society is absolutely obsessed with perfection, right? And I have another great book for you, which I think I've been recommending to all teens. In fact, absolutely everybody should be reading this, Perfection Deception by Jane Bloonstein, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. It's easy to slip back into it when everybody else is doing it. I mean, again, let's go back to social media. Every image, look at, even Kim Kardashian recently, right? She lost 16 pounds. I'm sure it was harmless and innocent on her part to fit into the Marilyn Monroe dress. But at the end of the day, what does that say to her, 15-year-old followers, right? This is the problem. And, they have to recognize the power and influence they have in that moment before they might not want to mention that they're doing a diet to fit into a dress, right? But it's easy to slip back into the counting calorie thing. And this is why it's important to learn to eat. And I almost wish she hadn't called it intuitive eating, because it's just getting so confused. People are so confused, they don't really understand. They should just say, let's find your comfort spot. Because when you found your comfort spot, you will never have to worry about, what you're eating, or it's not about what you're eating. It's about how you're eating it. So you can have a hamburger, you can have steak, but this is all to do with finding this little space inside of yourself when you've had enough. Okay, look at the French. They eat butter all day long and fat. But you never see these women, the French women as a whole, don't diet. You know, they're not obsessed in Europe the way they are. Well, England is, okay? England is, for anybody that's watching, and obviously I'm English. But the rest of Europe, generally not. No, it's never been an issue. They don't diet the same way that we do in the West.
No. And gyms, at least, well, maybe not in England, but like in Italy, because I lived in Italy for quite a while, there's no gyms. There was like 3 gyms in all of Florence. I mean, you know, that's a Western thing.
Yes, it is. It is a Western thing. So just a different lifestyle, different culture. But if you find this place, first off, you want to be eating in a parasympathetic state. So you want to be calm when you eat, okay? A sympathetic state is the fight or flight state, and you don't want to be eating in that state. You want to be eating in a parasympathetic state and being mindful of, you know, where you at when you're eating and pacing yourself and taking time to put your knife and fork down halfway through a meal and just sitting with where you're at, because it takes time for your stomach to even register the food anyway. So you should be sitting in that place for a few minutes to say, well, have I had enough right now? Or haven't I hit my sweet spot yet? Right? But you don't have to diet if you've learned how to do this, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. It's crucial.
It is. And I think too, part of the problem is we've become so used to not listening to our bodies and not listening and paying attention to everything outside of ourselves instead of going within and being like, you know, most people don't even realize, like, for example, I'm going to use me as an example, but I call it recreational sugar when I eat something like candy, not fruit, but recreational sugar. I have to be it took me a long time to realize the parallel between my anger and the sugar. I'm quick to anger if I eat too much sugar. That it's not good for me. So I always have to think about, maybe if I'd listened sooner, I would have realized, hey, my body doesn't really like that.
Yes, because actually, from my history, and basically gave me, after I started all those behaviors, 10, 15 years later, I ended up with like 100 different food allergies and all types of stomach issues and heart palpitations.
Wow.
And it was those scary issues that really pushed me into, you got to stop doing this. This has to stop. They're dangerous at the end of the day. And that's, you certainly do not want to get to the place where you're having a heart attack. But you know what? My heart bleeds for these young girls right now and young guys. It's even worse for the guys to come out and talk about it. And I going to a meeting is huge. You have to find an eating disorder anonymous meetings. And by the way, they also need to go to CODA meetings. Codependent Anonymous. I'd say 95% of the population needs to be in CODA meetings.
Yeah, no, seriously, I've been to a few, and I know you're probably familiar with the joke, but most people go to CODA so that they can fix the other person in their life.
And that's the other thing that's a confusing term. People go, CODA, I'm not dependent on anybody. Why do I need to go to a codependent anonymous meeting? What they don't, it's obviously the name is really doesn't really describe what it's about, but again, that's huge because that boils down to the emotional issue that's creating the eating disorder in the first place. Exactly. It's the underlying source of everything, So that's a major thing. And, by the way, going back to the addiction thing, everyone should be reading Dr. Gabor Mate, who is like a fantastic guy. He's a doctor that worked on the east side of Vancouver, British Columbia, for about 12, maybe 15 years with the addicts down there. And he wrote a great book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. Fantastic book if you want to really understand the underlying issue with addiction and eating disorders. Going to add that to it. Yeah.
I love that. On that note, it is time for us to go to commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a moment.
Sounds great. Thanks, Julie.
All right, everyone. As I mentioned, it is commercial time. But before we go, I just want to say hello to everybody who's watching us live. And we will be right back after these messages.
Are you someone who is struggling to move forward because you suffered a loss? Maybe you're even finding it difficult to complete the most basic tasks. Are you looking for a way to start enjoying life again without feeling guilty or the resistance to do so? Spiritual life coach Sarah Stockham saw a need for people who haven't learned how to grieve without putting their entire lives on pause. And so she created a program that solves this issue called Choosing Life Right Now. This program is simple and you can do it on your own. If you are ready to learn how to feel your grief while still being able to smile, to honor the sacredness of what took place as a loss, and yet still continue to live with joy, and if you'd like to take care of your whole being with grace and love, then I'd like to invite you to experience her new program called Choosing Life Right Now. Sarah is currently offering her program for the promotional price of $77, but it won't stay at this price for long. To learn more, check out her website. The address is on the screen.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, my name is Julianne Meyer. I am the host of Own Your Wellness, and today's special guest is Susan Williams. Let's bring her back. Hello, welcome back.
Hi there.
So, I was thinking about maybe the people around somebody that has an eating disorder. How can you be supportive if you notice a behavior that maybe isn't healthy?
That's a very good question.
It's a tough one.
It's a really tough one because I know from speaking to families that had teens. Actually, I have one family I was actually counseling. The daughter was actually in her 30s. So, there's so much shame. Again, we're back to the shame thing again, but there's so much shame. And it's the problem is the more you push that person, the the worse it becomes. Because again, with eating disorders, like I said, it's control more than anything else. And so needling them and pushing them to go and get help, can so often backfire and just make them go more in the more extreme direction. It really has got to be gentle nudging. I think finding, like I said, a really good eating disorder anonymous meeting close to you, and saying that I will go with you to this first meeting, would be, listen, something's going on. I know something's going on with you, and it's okay, and you're going to be fine. But I am a little worried that there is this meeting that I've heard fantastic things about, and I'm going to go with you. I think it'd be great. We can go together. There's really no other way to do it, because, this, lots of times, and obviously, right, the parents panic. If you have a child, a teen, or a youngster that is, all of a sudden they're not eating. Okay. They're not coming down to dinner. They're refusing meals. Lunches are coming home or getting chucked in the trash or what have you. It's, and this can go on for a while. It takes a lot of very gentle nudging. It's like the only way. I think one family I spoke to, well, it'd gone on for quite a while, maybe a year or two, actually, maybe longer, before we actually agreed to go to the Eating Disorder Anonymous meeting. And obviously, having said that, if you've got, an extreme situation of extreme weight loss, and it's becoming, dangerous, obviously, then they have to step in and do something about it. Either go see go to a therapist, or, talk to a treatment center. Actually, if you, I wish I had it, actually, I should have had it with me. But NIDA has this hotline, and they can actually refer you to lots of treatment centers across the country. They are fantastic. So they have great support also. You call NIDA and say, this is what's going on for me. And do you recommend, what treatment center next to me do you recommend, the one closest to me? And if they can't afford a treatment center, then what other free support is there in my area that I could take my daughter or son to, or sister or brother or what have you, They have a great source. It's a great source of support with NIDA. I would highly recommend.
Something that I was hearing you say that I just really want to highlight is that, and maybe at least from my perspective, it's kind of like we want to help those that we love, but ultimately they're the ones that have to make the choice to help themselves. And sometimes, we can't take on their lives for them.
That's right.
As painful as it is to watch somebody go through something and it seems like they're choosing it. I don't know anybody who is okay that would willingly make these choices that would hurt themselves. So obviously something is off, and it's kind of like the one thing that is supposed to, help you is a thing that is a little off at the moment. So it makes it hard to make these good choices for ourselves. Even think about, even if it's not even an eating disorder, how often we do things that aren't in our best interest. It's just another level of that.
Yes. And, again, addiction is out there, right? So people, you've got all the shows like Intervention, everybody can talk about it. The opioid thing is top of mind on everybody's, in everybody's mouth these days. Everyone's talking about it. Eating disorders aren't talked about.
No.
This is a bodily function we are dealing with that somebody has an issue with. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. Being the Brit that I am, it's like having a bowel problem or a bathroom issue, or nobody wants to talk about that. And and how could you say you had a problem with that? What type of problem? People would think you're crazy, or like, well, that's weird, I don't want to talk about that. It's the same thing with eating disorders, because you're going to have to eat. oh, you can't survive without it. So what are you going to do, right? So it's such a fine line, because here, you want to get them help, and you want to get them into treatment, or you want to get them to a meeting, and you have to eat to live. So what are you going to do with this family member that obviously has an issue? And again, I think it's just got to be very gentle nudging. Force feeding is the worst thing you can do with somebody who's got an eating disorder. And they might not even think they have an eating disorder, right? Oh, I'm just a diet. It's just a diet. Leave me alone. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But they don't realize.
You can stop whenever I want.
Disorders actually rewire your brain and your thinking around food. So you go from being a normal intuitive eater, which, by the way, most of us were as young children. We all grew up intuitive eaters. Okay. Yeah, see a 3-year-old eating, they eat when they want to eat and they stop when they've had enough.
Exactly.
And, I used to make food for my kids, and it would be peanut butter and jelly sandwich and some vegetables, and they would run in and grab a few bites and eat a few vegetables and go outside again. And that was it. They just come in and eat it however they wanted. But when you start dieting, you become a preoccupied obsessive eater. So all that natural intuition and non-issue around food is gone completely. And then, of course, the eating disorder rewires all of that to 24/7. What did I eat? What did I eat for lunch? Doing a constant journal in the back of your mind. I bet there's tons of people listening to this that can relate to this. Doing the journal with your mind throughout the day. What did I eat for breakfast? Is that okay? And what did I eat for lunch? Oh, I ate that. I had too much at lunch. I'm not going to eat dinner. I'm going to skip dinner altogether. Or, oh, they say you shouldn't eat after 4 o'clock. I mean, it all creeps in. And before you know it, you've got a full-blown issue going on there.
I think, that's such a really good point, especially that no eating after 4 or whatever the time is for you. But for me, it was like, if I didn't, I would do good all day long. And then late at night, I wanted to eat, and I wanted to eat everything.
Body is telling you exactly. You're telling you exactly what it needs and when it needs it. And of course, the problem is when you restrict, your body immediately assumes that you got on a plane last night and you went to a country that has zero food. It has no clue that you've got Ralph's and, Costco and, McDonald's down the road. It doesn't even know that. Your body goes into shock, and it actually starts to double the enzymes that make and store fat in the body to compensate for the fact that you've just suddenly gone onto this restrictive diet.
Yeah. So
it backfires anyway, because it's actually now doubling the enzymes that make and store the fat in the body. So counterproductive in every possible way. And of course, people will do this diet and they'll lose a few pounds, and then they'll go back to their normal eating or whatever they were doing before, and then you're back on it again. You're going to start all over. My stepmother in England, God bless her, has been on a diet every single Monday for 30 years.
Wow.
It's called the last meal, like the Last Supper. That's what it's coined as in intuitive eating, is that you hoard up and you have this massive meal, massive blowout on a weekend.
Wow.
And then you're going to be restricting yourself for the next 6 weeks. It's really takes a toll on the body. And fasting is healthy if it's done right. I'm not opposed to fasting, because it can be very healthy. We get to, detoxify the body. The liver gets a break. All the organs get a break. But that can also be very shocking and jarring to the system. So there's very gentle ways of doing it. And actually, Anthony William, I love Anthony William, the medical medium. He's fantastic. I actually had a health issue the last 2 years, Julie, that knocked me off my feet completely.
Oh, wow.
Anthony Williams protocols that really started bringing me back to life. So the doctors had no clue, and the doctors had no remedy for the issue. It was following his protocol was really, life-changing, actually. So I would highly recommend too. And his book, Cleanse to Heal, is fantastic. But it's, it's taxing and jarring on the body to be restricting to those extremes. Your adrenals, your kidneys, everything goes into shock. And people don't realize, right? They think, oh, I'll just bounce back. They don't realize how fragile your insides are and what they are going through with, everything we put them through on a daily basis,
Exactly. And, something too, I keep thinking that keeps popping into my head is about how it really does depend on the intention behind why you're doing something. And, the whole enjoying your food. Are you fasting for, cleansing purposes in a gentle way to treat yourself? Or are you doing it to, help heal yourself? Or are you doing it to starve yourself so that you can get into that Kim Kardashian dress or whatever? I mean, it makes a huge difference.
Yes, it does. Actually, that's huge, right? The intention behind it is absolutely huge. Unfortunately, with diets, it's all one thing usually.
Exactly.
I can't think of anything else unless, and I'm no doctor, unless a doctor has recommended specifically that this will be like a life-saving situation for you. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not going to, I wouldn't interfere with that, but let's say the rest of the population, aside from doctors' recommendations, is, because you want to lose weight, because you go into a wedding, you got a special event, you are going to be the bride. It's who knows, a million different scenarios. But yes, I think the intention is huge. And that's where you have to really start doing some self-analysis. Who am I really doing this for? Right? And like codependency, again, back to codependency. Who am I doing this for? Am I doing this because this person's going to love me more if I lose 5-10 pounds? Or I just don't feel lovable enough. No one's going to want me unless I lose all this weight. And look at what the celebrities are doing. And look at them on, TikTok and Instagram. I mean, I scroll through my Instagram and it's shocking, right?
It's disturbing. It's like, how's that human?
It's disturbing and shocking when you see a picture, especially for someone like myself who, actually, for most people, they should recognize the difference between normally slim and completely anorexic. Because I see people glorifying someone on Instagram, that is extremely painfully slim. Yeah. And I think, God, you don't know what you're doing when you tell them that. And of course, they're feeding into this. And it's obvious they have an eating disorder of some kind. Maybe they don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't. Some people are naturally thin and slim, but you can tell when someone is
sickly.
Yeah.
There is definitely a difference.
I know. No polite way for me to say it, but Dr. Sandra Armott, Armodt, has a fantastic TED Talk. She's a neuroscientist, and she realized that her entire life she'd been dieting.
Oh, wow.
And realized where it was heading. So she has a fabulous TED Talk that I would highly recommend to everybody too. And again, that book, The Perfection Deception and Intuitive Eating, is just key to learning how to, because once you've learned how to eat intuitively, then you can eat anything you like, anything you want, right? Because you found this spot within yourself and you always eat to this comfortable place. You're not gorging yourself and you're not binging, but you're satisfied and you feel just right. So basically this whole thing about dieting and, obsessing about what you eat or not eat, and I shouldn't eat this and I shouldn't eat that. And, you have food allergies like me when you really shouldn't be eating it. That removes all of that, because once you have this place that you can keep going to every mealtime It alleviates all that stress around the food.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because I mean, I'm thinking about Europeans again, and when I lived in Italy, and I used to eat all of those things that were supposedly bad, and I was thinner than I was when I lived in New York, and I was walking everywhere. So my point is that I didn't have any guilt about it. I didn't have all these, preconceived notions and ideas. And like you said, I would stop. I wouldn't eat tons of it because it was there and I wasn't obsessing over it. So I think that there's something really to that intuitive knowingness and just enjoying your food, whatever it is that you choose to eat.
Exactly. That's it. It's supposed to be a pleasurable activity. That is one of the, there's 10 points in intuitive eating. I'm going to read them to you actually and tell you exactly what they are right now. Just bear with me for a minute.
No problem.
10 points in intuitive eating. Okay. And learning to enjoy your food is one of them. And of course, you need to be mindful, right? That involves trying to be a little mindful. But number one in intuitive eating is reject the diet mentality. You throw out all the diet books and the magazine articles that tell you that this is the way you're supposed to look, and that offers you false hope. Any diets that you see online that offer you false hope of losing weight quickly, easily, and permanently, just not going to happen. Okay. Number two is honor your hunger. Keep your body biologically fed with adequate carbohydrates and energy. Otherwise, what? If you undereat, you trigger a primal urge to overeat. It's like grocery shopping when you haven't eaten all day.
Exactly.
And you're throwing everything in the cart like a crazy person, and in the car on the way home. This is where we tend to overeat. So you honor your hunger throughout the day, right? So that you're eating little and often is a lot better than just sitting down to these massive meals. And number three is make peace with food. So that's huge, is learning to, you call a truce, basically. Stop this food fight. Allow yourself to have whatever you want to have within reason. But you know what? These people that are, they're chefs, and they go home and they practice meals on their family. So there was this one lady I was talking to, and she practiced making pizza for her family. And she made it every single day, about 4 weeks. And you know what? Those kids were dying to eat a vegetable at the end of it.
Exactly.
You can saturate yourself. You want to have it, you want to have cake, have the cake. Because if you don't have the cake when you want to have the cake, it's going to turn into a huge binge fest later on. So you make a truce, stop the food fight, and you make peace with food. Number four is challenge the food police. That constantly those little voices in your head that are punishing you and screaming at you and putting you down and saying negative things at you. Those little voices every time you have something that you believe that you shouldn't be having. Right? Those little voices in the back of our head. That's huge. Number five is respect your fullness. So that is where you're tuning in and learning where to find your sweet spot. Number six is discover the satisfaction factor, which the Japanese are all about, preparation. If you make the food and you prepare your food in such a way that is pleasing and inviting, it creates an environment that is pleasing and conducive, which actually creates a more satisfying meal, would you believe? So making it more, preparing in such a way that, just sitting down and having a napkin and making the food look really, have to go crazy, but, rather than just, grabbing it and eating it, standing in the kitchen sink, let's sit down, right? And make it more satisfying and pleasurable. And number seven is honor your feelings without using food.
Ooh.
Eating. So let's honor your feelings without using food, just like you'd use everything else, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it is, right? So boredom, depression, loneliness, anxiety. Learn to sit with these feelings without using food to try and fill up that gap or, to satisfy.
Yeah, change it.
Yes. And each food, all these feelings have a trigger, and they are all appeased differently. So you're lonely, pick up the phone. You're right. You're bored, pick up a book, go for a walk. There's always something you can do versus sitting down and eating everything that you bought for your groceries for the next 2 weeks. And the thing is that when we do that, then we tend to feel worse anyway at the end, right?
True.
Number 8 is respect your body. Accept your genetic blueprint. How many people need to do that? Just as a person with a size 8 shoe wouldn't expect to squeeze into a size 6. Some people do get their toes removed.
Oh my goodness.
So respect your body so you can feel good about who you are. It's huge, and it's hard to reject the diet mentality when we're overly critical about our own body shape. Number 9 is exercise. Feel the difference, right? So it's important to get out of your head every single day. Get out of your head and into your body. Whether you're going to meditate or whether it's going to be, I love riding my bike. Okay, I love going to the gym, but I love riding my bike. So finding something you really love. It shouldn't be punishing. It should be something you enjoy. And number 10 would be honor your health. Make food choices that honor your health while making you feel good. And again, it's not about what you're eating. It's about how you're eating it.
Exactly. And I think that is it's a relief when you think about eating in that way, because it's so much more natural. Yes. I hate it, being in the health and wellness industry. It's like nails on a chalkboard every time I hear a conversation about micros and macros and proteins and carbs. And I'm like, what happened to food? Can we just talk about, are you having corn or?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's progress, not perfection, right?
Absolutely.
And, Oprah and Kate Hudson, who turned to the dark side by getting involved with Weight Watchers. I'm sorry, but I'm not a fan of Weight Watchers, because Weight Watchers actually has an app now. I think it's called Kaboo, that encourages kids to basically count calories or avoid certain foods that are no-go foods. And they do it like a stoplight. Red for no, red, you're not going to touch that, and green for go. You can have it. I mean, this is what we're up against, Julie, day after day after day after day. And so that's why I recommend that everybody pick up Evelyn's book, Intuitive Eating. She's got several editions out. She's also got one for teens. If anybody's listening who has teens who are, they're worried about with their eating, don't even wait till they're just having, picky eating. Don't even wait till they're dieting or anything else. This would be something that you need to keep them. They're intuitive eaters when they're toddlers. Let's try and keep them intuitive.
Keep going.
Yeah. Keep going the whole way through without breaking into any dieting behaviors, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Susan, that's all the time that we have. Can you believe it's already been an hour?
Great. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here on the show today, sharing your knowledge and sharing about yourself as well. It's been such a pleasure to hear from you and get to know you a little bit better.
You too. I appreciate the time. I really do. And for anybody out there, please find an Eating Disorder Anonymous meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
And as I said, that's all the time that we have for today. We'll see you again later this week. Enjoy the night.